Hello and welcome to another Linesman poetry discussion. Today we are looking at Sonnet 18. This poem was written by William Shakespeare and published in 1609, which I think you would agree is quite a long time ago. The most noticeable thing about this poem is the fact that because it was written so long ago, the poet, or Shakespeare, uses language that we don't normally use today, and that might make the poem seem a bit daunting. So we will have to decipher some of the language used in the poem, but other than that, I think you will find that this poem is actually rather straightforward. Right, so before we continue with the analysis of the poem, let's read it once. It's always advisable to read a poem 2 or 3 times before you analyze it, just to get a general feel of what you are dealing with, and then it makes the analysis all the more easy. Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Alright, so let's look at the first line. Now, the only word that you might not know there is the, which I underlined there for you. The rest you ought to know as a grade 12 English speaker. So the means you. I think you might have been able to guess that from the context, but if you didn't, now you know. And then if we translate it literally, it means, shall I compare you to a summer's day? Now, first of all, we might ask ourselves the question, who is the you that the speaker is talking about? Now, some sources say that Shakespeare wrote this poem for the Earl of some place. It's probably true. I don't know about that. But the thing that we need to take away from this is, remember, there's a difference between the poet and the speaker. The person talking in the poem is not the poet, but the speaker. So really, it depends on whom the poem is read to. I mean, you can, if you read this poem to anyone, then they would be the that you are comparing a summer's day to. In this case, we can say with, I think, quite a bit of surety that the person being addressed in the poem is probably a loved one, because if you look at the tone and the content of the poem, it seems that the speaker is addressing a loved one. You can just, they don't say anything nasty or cruel about this person, only good things. Right, so the speaker asks this question, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And then the speaker spends the rest of the poem addressing it, as you will see from the next line. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Now, again, thou is a strange word that we don't normally use today, and that just simply means you. And then art is another one. Oh, it's a word that we use today, but it doesn't mean the same as it does in this context. Here it means are. So the speaker says, you are more lovely and more temperate. Now, temperate is a word that we use today, but maybe it would be a good idea to just talk about the definition there. Temperate means showing moderation or self-restraint. So when you are temperate, you won't just flow off the handle, or you're not what we would call a wild card. Um, you are probably someone who is easy to deal with when you are temperate. Um, so basically, the speaker says you are more lovely and you show more moderation and self restraint than a summer's day. Because remember, in the first line, he asked the question, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And then immediately afterwards, he starts doing just that. Um, and then the speaker already begins to answer the question found in the first line. That's how we can summarize that. Okay, so rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Now, these rough winds, the speaker is talking about those winds that often precede summer when the earth starts to warm earlier in the day. I don't know if you've noticed, usually, well, in South Africa, there during August, um, the wind blows quite violently throughout the day, especially early in the morning. And the speaker in this poem probably had the same experience. Um, Now, the darling buds here refer to those little flowers that start to bloom at the beginning of summer, or maybe, again, even springtime. Now, these darling buds create some sort of symbolism. Firstly, uh, it states that flowers are beautiful but fragile, especially um, when you look at a flower that is in bloom. Uh, those those buds are quite fragile, that they're not strong yet. And this creates an image of innocence. And the speaker is basically saying that summer has no mercy for these kinds of things. It doesn't care whether its rough winds destroy these darling buds. Um, and then the speaker also implies that their loved one will never treat innocence so harshly, because their loved one is compassionate and caring. And then just a final note, May here. Um, this poem was written in Europe, which is in the northern hemisphere, and so the month of May refers to spring or summer, whereas in South Africa, you would have probably said September. Just a small interesting thing. And summer's lease hath all too short a date. Now, the word lease there is quite strange. Also, hath is not one that we use these days. Lease is actually a word that is used quite a lot in legal documents because, as you will see here, a lease is a contract outlining the terms under which one party agrees to rent property owned by another party. So, if you maybe if you had some cows and you didn't have any pasture for them, you would rent, you know, a, a field or a bit of ground from your neighbor, and then you two would sign a lease agreement. And then the word hath there, it means has. So summer's lease has all too short a day. What this basically means, what the speaker is saying, is that summer never stays long enough or for as long as we want it to. It always it's actually quite ironic because in the first line he complains about summer, and you'll see he does it in the rest of the poem as well. But then he says summer doesn't stay long enough. So it's a bit of irony there. And to summarize this, the speaker's loved one is not like summer, in that they will always be there for the speaker. And what's important to realize here is that, of course, they won't really be there for the speaker forever. Just maybe their memory and the way the speaker's feelings towards them is the important thing that will remain with the speaker forever. Right, so now we get to the next line. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. Now, the eye of heaven here is a metaphor for the sun. So what the speaker is basically saying is that sometime the sun shines too bright, or you could also be saying summer days are sometimes too hot. just generally complaining about summer again. Um, and but what's important here is that this refers again to the harshness of a summer's day, um, and he puts it in contrast with his loved one, the gentleness of the speaker's loved one. Right, and then we get the line, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. Now, his, again, it refers to the eye of heaven, the sun, and gold complexion is a interesting kind of imagery that the speaker creates, um, because the word gold has a positive connotation, and we get the sense that he's only complaining about summer, um, in this poem. But now, he says, um, let's look at the definition here. Complexion is the natural color, texture, and appearance of a person's skin, especially of the face. So he's basically saying the the sun, um, is has a beautiful face. It's beautiful to behold. Um, and then we also get the word dimmed, which, if you take away that apostrophe and you add an E, it means dimmed, which is a word that we uh, use quite a bit today. And that means to make or become less bright or distinct. So, um, what the speaker is basically saying is sometimes clouds move in front of the sun, which makes the sky less bright and takes away the beauty presented by the sunshine. And you can see why Shakespeare didn't write it like this, this final line that we have here, because it's not very poetic. It's it sounds like it could have been taken from a science textbook. Um, that's why we need to analyze poetry and to get behind the message. And every fair from fair sometime declines. Now, we know the word fair, uh, we know it to mean, just, or, to divide things up equally. That would be fair. But in this case, fair means beautiful. Um, when you say that painting is fair, or the girl has fair hair, or something like that. Um, just another thing, in this case, the word fair is used as a noun. And so we would, rather than saying beautiful, it means beautiful, we would say uh, it means beauty. So every beauty from beauty sometime declines. I don't know if that makes a bit more sense to you yet, but we'll see how it works just now. Right, the word declines means to become smaller, fewer, or less. So let's look at what the speaker is basically saying. He is saying that everything that is beautiful now will at some point have that beauty become smaller, fewer, or less. And another way to put it, maybe a less science textbook kind of way, is to say everything beautiful, sorry, every, there should be every beautiful thing will decrease in beauty at some point. Sorry about that typo, guys. Every beautiful thing will decrease in beauty at some point, and we know this to be true. When you look at someone who is young and they still look good, the older you become, you tend to get more wrinkly and droopy. I hope I'm not offending anyone. Right, so I think this line makes a bit more sense now. One thing to just note as well, there's possible alliteration of the F sound. Now, grade 12s, it would be wise to look here at the way I wrote that first sentence, possible alliteration of the F sound. We tend to when we talk about alliteration, when we talk about a letter, remember it's not a letter that's being alliterated, it is the sound. And that's why I wrote it like this. So you can maybe remember that for when you are answering questions about alliteration, is that it's the sound that's being alliterated and not the letter. And another thing to also remember is that um, alliteration doesn't always necessarily mean something. Sometimes it can just help with the with the pace of the poem. Sometimes I believe it's actually quite uh, coincidental. Um, but in most cases, alliteration means something. In this case, I think we could argue that um, the sound it creates the effect of something being erased. I mean, if you take your finger and or if you take an eraser and you rub it across a page, it creates sort of a sound. I don't know. I hope you would agree with that. So we could say that um, the sound creates the effect of something being erased and could possibly add to the image presented by the speaker in this line. Right, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Now, this line should actually be read in conjunction with the previous one um, because it relates quite heavily to that one. So we would read, every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Now, in this case, the word chance means accident. You probably have heard people say something happened by chance um, and not according to a certain plan. Uh, and then nature's changing course is the inevitable change caused by the passing of time. Um, and then let's just first look at untrimmed before we look at this line as a whole. The word untrimmed um, means to become untidy or disheveled through lack of clipping or trimming. So if you avoid going to the barber for too long, your hair will become untrimmed. Or if you wear the same shirt 30 days in a row, it will also probably become untrimmed, and you will just have a general sort of untrimmed appearance. So if we look at another way to state this line, we could say that every fair from fair sometime declines and loses its decoration or its beauty due to some accident or simply the inevitable change caused by the passing of time. Right. So remember, this is a sonnet. Sonnet always has 14 lines, which are divided into the first part of it is an octave, which is 8 lines, as you can see here. And then the next part is the sestet, which consists of 6 lines. And then it ends with a rhyming couplet that sort of sums up the whole idea of the poem. Now, here we have the octave. Let's just quickly read it, see if it makes more sense now that we have discussed all these difficult words. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Um, so you can see this is the first part of the poem. This is here where he just basically complains about the summer all the time and how no summer's day can come close to his loved one's beauty and moderate temper and the fact that it goes away and it fades and the loved one or the memory of the loved one will never do that. Right, so let's look at the sestet, because here the main idea of the poem changes somewhat. You'll see it's not a big change, but changes somewhat. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. First of all, thy means your. Again, you could have worked that out from the context, but your eternal summer shall not fade. Now, eternal summer is a metaphor relating to all the positive aspects of summer, which is warmth, joyfulness, beauty, life, all of those things. So the speaker is basically saying, but your everlasting warmth, joyfulness, etc., will never fade. It will stay with us forever. And here he carries on with that eternal summer, and nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Fair again, beauty. Thou means you, and owest is a strange word that we don't use these days. We just say own. So nor lose possession of that fair, that beauty that you own. Another way to say it, that beauty that is yours will also never be taken away from you. Right, then we have, nor shall death brag, thou wanderest in his shade. Again, thou means you, that you probably know quite well by now. And then wanderest is uh, the form of the word that we don't use these days, in modern English. It means wanders. And the definition of that is to walk in a leisurely or aimless way. Maybe you have wandered home from school to your house in the afternoon, or you've went on a long walk with a friend or someone like that, and then you wander. So um, in this case, death is personified as someone who is very arrogant about the way he ultimately affects everyone's life. And that's why the speaker says, nor shall death brag, because let's be honest, if there's one thing that we are all going to do, it is we are going to die one day. Hey? So death can be proud of that, but not in this case, because this person's loved one, the speaker's loved one, is not affected by death. And here we can summarize that. Not even death, who affects all of us in the end, can claim this person's eternal summer. Then the speaker says, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. Now this seems like a complicated line, but in eternal lines to time basically just means forever and ever. As time goes on, this person will not only continue to exist, but growest here means to grow, also a very archaic word. So the memory of this person and the feeling the speaker has towards this person um, will not only, as we said before, continue to exist, but it will keep on growing. And to grow means to expand and to become bigger. So the significance of this person will increase as time goes by. And here we say that the speaker claims that their loved one will continue to exist forever and ever as time goes by. Nothing, not even death, will be able to erase this person's existence. Now, this is a very strong claim, I think you would agree, because this speaker is basically saying their loved one can defy nature. They can live forever, basically. And this claim, this very, very strong claim, is justified or explained in the final couplet. Remember, we said sonnet, it consists of 14 lines. The first 8 lines we call the octave, then we have the last 6 lines, the sestet, and then the final 2 lines of the sestet we call the rhyming couplet, or in this case just the couplet. And we will read those 2 lines together. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. And it's a very, very beautiful way that the speaker uses to justify their claim. And he basically says, as long as there is someone around to who is able to read this poem, this declaration that the speaker makes, or even maybe all the books are burnt one day and someone can just recite it from memory, then this declaration still lives on, and it's this poem that gives life to the speaker's loved one. So they will never cease to exist in that way. which is true. That's why we are reading it now. Um, and I think Shakespeare actually has a quite strong message um, by saying this. He's basic. He's not saying that, but the message that I get is, if you love something or if you have strong feelings towards something, then capture it. Write a poem, write a story, make a film, write a song, paint a picture, but capture that very strong feeling, um, so that it can be immortalized by your actions. Right. Thank you very much for watching. We will not read the poem again. You probably have it on your desk as we speak, so you can go through it on your own and see whether it makes more sense to you now. I hope this helped a bit. And remember, I'm not here to simply shove poetry down your throats. So if you disagree with anything that I said, or if you want to discuss anything further, or maybe you want to have something clarified or so, please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section, and then we can continue with our discussion, because that's how we understand poetry properly. And then I will see you in the next video.